The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 214.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Braveheart.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Physician healers. Wearing a bit thin. Fantastic.
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the 11th Doctor story, The Doctor's Wife. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Doctor Who on Facebook, where we're at facebook.com/Secrets of Doctor Who. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and be sure to leave us comments in both places. We love to hear from you on what you think of what we're talking about. So, today we're talking about The Doctor's Wife, and no, I don't mean River Song.
Well, and that's an important point, because this was in the season leading up to him getting married to River Song, and so the idea of River being his wife was very much on the fandom's mind, and to tease us with an episode called The Doctor's Wife and have it not be River, what's that about? But I think they did it well. Yeah. If you look structurally through the history of the show, the Tardis is the Doctor's wife. So, regardless of what human wife he might have.
So you're saying the Doctor's a polygamist. He's got the Tardis and River as his wives.
Well, there are 12 or 13 or 14 of them now.
Right. So we should point out, too, that this episode was written by Neil Gaiman, and this was the first one he wrote. I think he's written several since.
Well, he's written two as episodes. He wrote this, and he wrote Nightmare in Silver. Oh. And I was really excited when they announced Neil Gaiman was going to be the author of this episode, because he's a very famous comic book writer that I've been familiar with for years, and he has a reputation for being very intellectual and sophisticated and high quality in what he does.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that definitely came through here. He's also subsequently written some other things. He's written like a comic story, incidentally involving the Corsair, who gets mentioned in this episode. Cool. And he's written some other things. He wrote for Doctor Who Lockdown Rory's story, where Rory is talking to a cell phone, the only cell phone in the world.
Oh, that's
recording a message for his future son.
Yes, in 1947 or something like that. Yes, that was awesome. That was really good.
One of the things that I found interesting about this is it was kind of written backwards from a certain perspective. The initial idea for this that he got was someone is chasing the Doctor through the TARDIS, some evil alien. And then he thought, well, the Doctor kind of knows the TARDIS really well. That's going to give him an advantage. So let's make it the companions instead of the Doctor.
Right.
And then he got the idea, so that would place the Doctor off the TARDIS, presumably, when the chasing occurs. And then he said, let's make it more interesting. Let's get rid of the evil alien and make it the TARDIS itself.
Right.
And then he said, okay, so then we need an explanation for why is the TARDIS doing this? And that led to the idea of the TARDIS's consciousness has been displaced into the body of a woman. And an evil consciousness is in control of the TARDIS. And that's the most interesting thing about this. The running through corridors is the least interesting. The most interesting thing, and the thing that makes this episode, is personifying the TARDIS. And it's interesting that he kind of backed himself into that idea from a running through corridors idea.
Well, and we've known throughout the history of Doctor Who that the TARDIS, of course, is telepathic. It can make telepathic links to the companions and the Doctor. And we know, of course, just by watching it, that it does have a personality of sorts. But to actually make that as almost like a living consciousness
Right.
is kind of that next step.
The TARDIS has had a personality throughout, but an unspoken one. And so for the first time, the TARDIS gets, in 50 years almost at that point, the TARDIS gets to speak. And this is a character, literally, like as much as the Enterprise is a character in Star Trek.
More so. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had indications all the way from An Unearthly Child, from the very first episode, that the TARDIS was alive.
Yeah.
Ian comments on it, and in the Third Doctor's time, and the Doctor doesn't deny it. In the Third Doctor's time, someone directly states to John Pertwee, "You're talking about it like it's alive," and he's going, "Yes, I am."
Right. So a couple more behind the scenes before we get into the actual episode itself. The TARDIS console in this episode, not the Doctor's TARDIS, but the one he builds with the TARDIS's consciousness. That console was designed by a teenage girl for another one of those Blue Peter competitions. Blue Peter is a kid show in Britain. And there were other Doctor Who related contests before, like for Love and Monsters and Utopia. The Love and Monsters one was designed the Absorbalov. Remember that? So, but this one, a teenage girl designed this TARDIS console area. And so they incorporated that into the episode. And then it became a toy that was like an action figure set that you could buy, which is, for the girl who won, I think that's pretty awesome to have that.
Yeah.
I'd put that on my resume.
I wonder if she gets royalties.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say just on the meta level before we dig down into the episode is I consider this a classic. This is one of my all-time favorite episodes. I'd forgotten how much I enjoy this. I consider it one of the classic episodes, but it is not, despite that, it is not an episode that I would show to a first-timer.
Oh,
some of the classic episodes like Blink or Silence in the Library I will use to introduce people to Doctor Who, but this wouldn't work for that because you have to appreciate the role of the TARDIS in the show for this to get this episode.
Most definitely. Well, and speaking of as a classic, the last point I want to make is this episode won a Hugo Award in 2012 for dramatic short form film presentation. And it was the first Hugo Award-winning Doctor Who episode that was written not by a showrunner. So, interesting, the little tidbit there. So, yes, I agree. I really enjoyed this. It was very tightly written. There's not a lot of extra going on here.
No.
Even despite the running through quarters.
I was going to say, but that's like actually part of the plot. So
Exactly. So it starts with, we see this young woman and an elderly woman in a strange, cluttered place, wearing old clothes that are seemingly out of time, and then they encounter a man in an old military uniform. I think it's, at one point, something online described it as a Confederate Army uniform, but it's not.
No.
I thought it looked like French.
It looked French.
It was actually, I think it was a conglomeration of several different old uniforms, but yeah.
Well,
Confederates were gray.
But...
Yeah. Confederates were gray. This was blue, so totally not right. Anyway, she calls the man uncle. He tells her she's going to undergo a painful experience, and then an Ood appears and leads her to a platform. And the names we're given is the old man is uncle, she's not all that old. She's an older woman is auntie. The Ood is called nephew, and the girl is called Idris. So the young woman. It's not really
only one with a real name.
Yes.
And she doesn't get to use it long.
No, because she's told that the nephew, the Ood, is going to drain her mind and soul from her body and leave her body empty, but not to worry, she'll have a new soul because a Time Lord is coming. So...
Yeah. Oh, by the way, for the first time since the horror of Fang Rock, just for once, everybody dies.
Yes, everybody dies.
Everybody but the Doctor and companions, yeah.
Right. And the TARDIS. So on the TARDIS, they're in the control room. The Doctor hears shaven haircut on the TARDIS door. Someone's knocking. Even though they're in deep space, and he opens the door, and it's an emergency telegraphic message cube from another Time Lord.
Telepathic.
Yes. And the Doctor is convinced that this means that there's another Time Lord out there. And as we recall, at this period in Doctor Who, he thinks that all other Time Lords are dead.
And this is great to see because this is a callback all the way to the War Games, where the Second Doctor constructed an emergency telepathic cube to communicate with the other Time Lords. the Doctor explains it's an emergency messaging system that Time Lords use, and it's great to see it again. It's visualized slightly differently, but it's the same thing. And he's also got an explanation for why there could be another Time Lord around, because he killed all the ones he thinks in the universe. And this is in a bubble universe, sort of, not really, that's outside our universe, so there could be another Time Lord there.
Right. There's a symbol on the box of an Ouroboros, which is the snake eating its own tail. And he says that's the mark of the Corsair, who it doesn't feel complete unless he's got the tattoo in every regeneration, which I'd love to see stories about the Corsair. So as you say, if Neil Gaiman has written them, I want to check them out. And it's also the first time in Doctor Who that it's said, in the script, that a Time Lord can switch sexes during a regeneration. So it comes up again later on, but he does mention that the Corsair has been both a man and a woman at different points. So Gallifreyans have this indeterminate.
They're like Black Mollies.
Exactly, yes. They're not human, that's for sure. So they have to leave the universe to go where the message came from, which interestingly has to burn up parts of the TARDIS in the process to get enough energy and oomph to go.
Which we have seen before. We've seen that before. The Fifth Doctor's first episode, they had to do that to escape. Was it a black hole? No, it wasn't the Fifth Doctor first episode. Yeah, it was.
It was the Fifth Doctor.
Yeah, Fifth Doctor's first episode. They had to escape like a black hole or the beginning of the universe or something like that.
Right. Yes. And this whole idea of like burning up parts, including apparently Amy and Rory's bedroom get burned up.
All the bedrooms.
Nothing important. Yeah, all the bedrooms. And when they land where they're going, all of the power of the TARDIS drains out. So the TARDIS is basically like dead in the water. There's no energy powering it.
But there's lots of the needed energy around, so the Doctor says it'll recharge quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, rift energies we're told it's called, and we've seen that before. And then the soul of the TARDIS is put in that young woman Idris, and we see her giving off Artron energy as it enters her. So there's definitely a connection.
You hear the TARDIS noise.
Yes, coming out of her mouth, which is very distinctive.
So then we squash all of our characters onto the same set, and Idris comes running towards the Doctor yelling, "Thief, thief, you're my thief," which is a great line from the perspective of the TARDIS.
Yep.
Yes, my thief, I love that idea. It's very confusing because the Doctor doesn't know no one knows what's going on here. So they're in a tiny bubble universe on the outside of the main Prime universe, our universe.
Except the Doctor says that's completely wrong, but if it helps you, accept it.
Yeah, exactly. He keeps saying that. And all the junk around him, it's a junkyard, and all the junk around them is stuff that's fallen into the rift that connects the bubble universe and our universe. I find it interesting. So when Idris runs to the Doctor calling him thief, the uncle says, "Watch out, she's dangerous." I found that interesting.
Well, she's going through generation madness.
Yeah.
Yes. That she does act like a Doctor who's just regenerated. So yeah, she acts mad. She kisses him. She can't keep her tenses straight.
She more than kisses him. She Uncle warns she bites, and she says, "I do," and then she bites the Doctor, and then she says, "I like biting. It's like kissing, but there's a winner."
Yes,
which is apparently a line Stephen Moffat put in the script.
Yeah, yes, that is a good one. Auntie reveals that all of them were repaired by House, and House, it appears, they eventually figure out, is the planetoid that they're standing on. It's alive, this destination, this little world, asteroid, planetoid, something.
Boxes will make you mad.
Yes.
Yep.
The Ood nephew appears. Like you ever keep noticing that he keeps appearing like just out of nowhere? He's just suddenly there. Like he never walks in. He just is like you turn and he's standing there. I thought that was interesting. They don't say anything about it.
Ood are like that. They're oody.
Yes. And he appears and the Doctor fixes the little communicator ball. It's apparently not working. He also has creepy green eyes, which is we've not seen Oods have before. And when he fixes the communicator ball,
well, glowing green is House's signature color.
Right. That's right. I should mention that. The communicator device transmit the Corsair's message, which is If you're receiving this message, please help me. Send a signal to the High Council of the Time Lords on Gallifrey. Tell them I'm still alive. I don't know where I am. I'm on some rock-like planet.
And there are many other voices too, and we can kind of assume that that's the Corsair, but we don't know it.
Right.
There's actually a myth that that's Paul McGann, and it's his doctor, but it's not. There's no evidence that's Paul McGann. But we hear lots of these overlapping distress messages, and the doctor wants to then find out where they're coming from. So he lies to Amy and Rory, telling them he's forgotten his sonic screwdriver in his other jacket that they've never seen. Can you go get it from the TARDIS?
Yes. We also see that House speaks through Auntie and Uncle like puppets, by the way. That's an important point.
Really creepily. I mean, it's, he heals us and feeds us and clothes us, and we do my will.
Yeah.
Yes. And, the voice of House is awesome. It's David Sheehan, I think, who is an actor who's done several things related to Neil Gaiman's work. So, but the voice is so very it's hard to place how the voice comes across like a narrator of a kid's cartoon, very deep, very soothing, but yet creepy. So
kind
it's
of Burl Ives or somebody like that,
Yeah,
haunting. It's kind of a haunting house.
Yes, it is.
Oh,
so Amy picks up on the doctor, the doctor's inner turmoil. She says, when he finds these Time Lords, he's going to need to explain what he did to the rest of the Time Lords. And she intuits that he's so into this because he wants to be forgiven for what he's done to Gallifrey. He says, "Don't we all?" Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Don't we all want to be forgiven? And then she tells him not to get emotional because when he gets emotional, he makes mistakes. So kind of an interesting...
Like killing all the Time Lords.
Yes, exactly. So like you said, he sent Amy and Rory back to the TARDIS and then locks the door behind them so they can't get out. At which point, green smoke from House starts to writhe around the outside of the TARDIS. So something is going on. But then he's, meanwhile, looking around and finds a cupboard full of these Time Lord distress signal boxes and realizes that Auntie and Uncle are patchwork people repaired from various people parts, including the Corsair. So all these Time Lords are now dead in parts, I guess.
Boxes will make you angry.
Yep.
Right. That's what Idris had told him ahead of time, that the boxes will make you angry. And so when he finds the boxes, he's angry.
And at this point, the episode is heavily reminiscent of a Fourth Doctor episode called The Brain of Morbius, which is set in Gallifrey's own solar system, and it's another desolate, barren planet with a junkyard on it, and aliens that crash get knitted together to form patchwork people.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that. We're going to be talking about Brain of Morbius soon. It's coming up in
good episode.
rotation.
It's one of the Peter Hinchcliffe, Robert Holmes era Gothic tales that's based, in this case, off Frankenstein. And it introduces the so-called Morbius Doctors, the mysterious 8 previous regenerations of the Doctor that now are canon.
Yes. So, realizing Idris knew about these boxes ahead of time, he goes to find her, and he finds her in a cage, and he demands to know how she knew, and she says, "It's about time," which I love as a double meaning, because on one hand, it's about time you came to find me, but on the other hand, the reason she knows is time. It's about time that she's a TARDIS, and so therefore sees all of time.
Yeah, there's a sense that the TARDIS is beyond just the immediate time it's located at.
Right. It exists in all those times.
And although it's a clever pun, it's not original to Neil Gaiman.
Right.
That one's been around for a while. There was even a decades ago, there was a special on TV with that title, "It's About Time," by physicist Paul Davies. Oh.
So she tells him she's the TARDIS and tells her, you stole me, I stole you, which is a nice little thing that she stole. Because she did, because she flew him around where he needed to go without being in control.
And there's some great wordplay here. I mean, she later on talks about how I was kind of a little proud of herself. She's talking about how I stole a Time Lord so I could see the universe. But here she's talking about how you stole me and I stole you, and he says borrowed, and she says borrowed implies the intention to give back. What makes you think I would ever give you back?
Yeah.
Yes. And she also says, as she's experiencing being in a human body, she says, "Are all people like this so much bigger on the inside?" Which I love that as a another reference, because people are bigger on the inside, aren't they?
Well, and we find out that, and I can't remember if this part is a little bit later on, that the Doctor has been traveling in the TARDIS for 700 years at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he was about 200 years old when he left Gallifrey.
Right. And we've also had other time periods mentioned again in the Possible Astronaut, so we're getting much more definitive about the Doctor's age and time and that sort of stuff. So we're told that the house eats TARDISes, but it has to remove the TARDIS matrix first, or it would blow a hole in the universe. So that's why the TARDIS is inside Idris's body. So House removes it, then feeds on the rift energy in the TARDIS. And the Doctor then realizes Amy and Rory are in the TARDIS that's about to get eaten. We need to do something about that.
And, by the way, the Doctor also told him that this is the last TARDIS in existence.
Yeah.
Yes,
which
that's
is
important.
which is what motivates him to then not eat the TARDIS, but try to use it for a jailbreak from the not bubble universe.
Right. To go back to our universe to find more TARDISes.
Yeah. Now, inside the TARDIS, we hear the cloister bell as House assumes control of it, which would imply that there's some residual consciousness in the TARDIS to sound the cloister bell.
Mm-hmm.
And then House starts talking to Amy and Rory and says, "Why shouldn't I just kill you now?" And Amy kind of fumbles and hands the question over to Rory, and Rory has the worst answer in the world.
Yes.
I immediately thought of a better answer.
Right.
But instead, Rory says, "Well, if you killed us now, it wouldn't be any fun, and you need to have fun, don't you?" And the House says, "Okay, let's have some fun killing you," and proceeds to start torturing them. And we run through the corridors, and he starts playing mind games with them and things like that. And it's like, Rory, worst answer ever. If someone asks why you shouldn't be killed, do not suggest torture as an alternative.
Right.
How about I can help you? We know what's going on in the universe. We can be your servants.
You won't be lonely. We can be your friends, or anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
Because you don't have legs, we can walk outside the TARDIS for you. In any case, well, so the Doctor gets left behind and says, "I don't know what to do. That's a new feeling." And then he talks to Auntie and Uncle, who tell him this precisely, that because the Doctor said the TARDIS is the last TARDIS house hijacked to go back to the universe to find more, and then Auntie and Uncle keel over and die because House is no longer there keeping them alive. So Idris then reminds Idris/TARDIS. I'll just call her Idris for short. Reminds the Doctor.
Call her the TARDIS. That's who she is now.
Well, I don't want to get confused with the TARDIS, the box, and the TARDIS console. So I was having a hard time keeping it straight in my notes. So I'll just call her Idris, which sounds a lot like TARDIS if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
She reminds the Doctor that they're standing in a TARDIS junkyard, and so they should build a new TARDIS from the parts they're about, which is helpful when you have a sentient TARDIS with hands and feet and voice to help you build a replica of herself, or a working model, put it that way.
So we have this moment where they're looking at this valley in the giant space junkyard. And by the way, the giant space junkyard looks really good. I mean, there are these mammoth spaceships and stuff that we see in the background.
Yes.
But we look at this valley-like thing, and she compares it to looking at the corpses of her sisters who have all been killed.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And according to some, this is an allusion to an unearthly child where the TARDIS was found in a junkyard. I don't really see that, but they do find a lot of TARDIS components in this junkyard, and they start cobbling one together. And I love how Idris is chiding the Doctor. Now, her body is starting to shut down. She's got like 8 minutes to live, or 18 minutes to live, which is coincidentally just about the runtime left in this episode.
That's right.
But she's breaking down, she can't physically contribute to the work as much as the Doctor can. So he's lugging big, panels and stuff to build the TARDIS out of. And she's giving him advice, which he's resisting. and saying,
I've done this before.
I've rebuilt a TARDIS before. And she's like, you are like a 9-year-old little boy putting together a bicycle in your room. You never read the instructions. And he says, yes, I do. I always read the instructions. And she says, what does it say on my front door?
Yeah, I love
and
that.
He's like, pull to open. And which do you do? I push. For 700 years, it's been right there, and you don't pull to open.
It's like, and they never say in this episode that she's the Doctor's wife, despite the title. But yet they're like a married couple here, where the wife goes, "Oh yeah, what color are my eyes? Hazel."
That one I would know.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Pull to open is great. I love that they did that. Now, nitpickers have pointed out that technically on a police box, that refers to the compartment with the phone.
Right.
That you pull to open that. But it's also true that traditionally police boxes, you do pull the doors to open.
Right.
Yes.
Well, a real police box is too small to open into it, because then you wouldn't be able to actually, get in and close it as you're supposed to be able to do.
But that original prop master who built the doors to swing inward. So the House, having been told you need to keep us around to entertain you, it tells Amy and Rory to run. So we see lots of corridors we've never seen before in New Who. We've seen TARDIS corridors in Old Who. And we're told the anti-grav safeties are off, so it's like a holodeck here where the safeties are turned off. The Doctor and Idris are bickering about building this console, as we mentioned. I notice she has an advantage because she knows him better than anyone, even River, who really knows a lot about the Doctor. So he's really on his heels in these conversations and debates, which is a lot of fun to see the Doctor sort of at a disadvantage.
Yeah, like when he pushes back and complains about her not taking him where he wants to go. Well, I always took you where you needed to go.
Right.
And that's unanswerable. And I love her perspective on things. She talks to him like he's a kind of irresponsible husband about he goes out, he has adventures, he brings home strays, meaning the companions.
Yeah.
The Doctor also tries pushing back. She says, "Why do you think I chose you?" And he says, "I chose you. You were unlocked." And she says, "Of course I was." meaning she unlocked herself to catch the Doctor.
Right.
And she says that the reason she chose him was she stole a Time Lord so she could see the universe, and he was the only one mad enough.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's also a nice little discussion about being safe. He says, using a console without a proper shell, it's not going to be safe. And she says, this body has about 18 minutes left to live. The universe we're in will reach absolute zero in 3 hours. Safe is relative, which I love that. Like, safe is relative. Seems a good message for our times.
The Doctor himself has said similar things.
Right. Mm-hmm. And we've seen, like in the Third Doctor time and other times, the Doctor using a TARDIS console without the TARDIS shell to get around. So that's happened.
That's in Inferno.
Right. So on the TARDIS itself, the box, Amy and Rory...
Let the mind games begin.
Yes, they get separated, and we have this, what seems like a moment for Amy, turns out to be hours for Rory, and then they get separated almost immediately again, and now she finds him as an old man who's now crazy, and then finds his corpse among rantings he's written on the wall to kill Amy, but
Hate Amy, kill Amy.
Right. Yep. And then Rory shows up, and it's all been an illusion. He really weren't separated for years from his perspective.
By the way, this separation of Amy and Rory lasting years is something we're going to revisit next season, where Amy is the girl who waited for decades.
Yes. Right.
Only for real.
Yes.
So and it's not the first time. I mean, Rory mentions from last season's series finale, he waited for 2,000 years for Amy. So they have a tendency of missing dates.
Yeah. At least they both ended up in 1945 together or whatever.
Well, they even bring that up in this episode 30s. Where he goes, "I waited for you for 2,000 years, and you did it again."
You did it again, right? So the Doctor's new console doesn't work until Idris gives it its energy to go, which is a nice touch. And they send a telepathic message to the pretty one, which turns out to be Rory, not Amy.
I like how the Doctor is male. He thinks of Amy as the pretty one. The TARDIS is female. She thinks of Rory as the pretty one.
Yes. And it's a message to get him to lower the shield so that they can phase in aboard the TARDIS in flight. And she sends him to one of the old control rooms, which he's archived, which the Doctor says is impossible. And she says, well, you just don't know about it. I've been archiving them.
For neatness.
Right.
And we've seen alternate control rooms before. In the fourth Doctor's time, they introduced for a season or so an alternate control room. It was Sarah Jane's last season. They introduced an alternate control room that was very steampunk in its presentation. It had wood paneling and things like that. So we know the TARDIS has alternate control rooms, and the Doctor is surprised that there are any left because he's jettisoned them in order to, and she says, no, I've got these 30. And he says, I've only changed the desktop 12 times. And she says, yet. Yeah. So she's apparent because she's a multi-temporal entity. She has control rooms from the future that the Doctor hasn't used yet.
Maybe she can jettison the 13th Doctors.
She has from her perspective.
Yeah. Yes, right. Let's jettison the 13th. I have to say, I was a little disappointed that it was the 9th and 10th Doctor's control room and not like the first Doctor's or something.
Yeah.
That would have been fun.
Gaiman wanted it to be the original classic control room, but they didn't have the budget for that. And what they did have was the set for the 9th Doctor that they had left standing just for this episode. Apparently, they'd kept it around.
Okay. So as Amy and Rory are running, suddenly Amy can't see, and then we have this. Rory goes around the corner and gets knocked out, but the house uses Rory's voice to lure her in to Ood nephew. So there's this weird interlude there.
This is a very weird sequence because it's everything up to now. Like houses, when he did the anti-grav fail-safes are off. What he did was he inserted a corridor at right angles to the ones they're running down, so they could fall down it like a pit with the gravity safeties off.
Right.
And then, separating them with doors and having time appear to run at different rates, all that makes sense. But this sequence where Amy goes blind is different because the way it's presented, it's not that she's physically blind, it's that to her the lights are off.
Yep.
But to Rory, the lights are on.
Right.
And this is very strange. I don't know how the TARDIS is doing this exactly, selectively making photons flow for one person and not another.
Or maybe it's telepathic messing with their head, their perception.
That's all this is, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all this is. It's all just the TARDIS, the house with its consciousness having the telepathic link with them.
Yeah.
Basically messing with them, and I mean that's at least that's how I saw it, was basically just because we know we've got the telepathic circuits in the TARDIS, he was just using them to have fun.
Yep.
I interpreted it somewhat differently based on the physicality of how it builds up with like the pit corridor, because that's something, since the TARDIS has internally configurable geometry.
Yeah.
It could physically do that, and I assume that it can make time run at different rates and create alternate versions of Amy and Rory as a result. So this is maybe like a parallel Rory that did have to wait.
Oh, that's creepier.
Yeah, I just saw that as being, again, a telepathic trick because of the one where it was just the desiccated corpse, and then she turns, Rory gets there and it disappears. It's just gone. And so I just saw that as that was just a telepathic trick. The same one with the old Rory that she ran into.
I think the alternate timeline one, though, is super creepier. So,
it is. It is.
Yeah. So at the doors to the old control room, they have to give it the password that Idris has given them, which is Crimson 11 Delight and the smell of dust after rain, which earlier she had said was petrichor.
Yep. Yeah, and petrichor is a real word, although I'm not familiar with it specifically referring to dust. It's generally, in my understanding, just the smell after the first rain.
Mm-hmm.
Of the season.
As I understand it,
or a rain.
It's basically bacteria that's in the soil produce this smell when it first starts to rain.
Right. When they realize that you can't just say it, you have to think it, the different parts of it, you have to think about crimson, you have to think 11, etc., etc. You have to feel delight, etc.
And you have to conjure the mental image or mental feeling of that smell.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So they do get inside, and it is the control room for Doctors 9 and 10. And as Ood nephew comes in to kill them, that's when the Doctor and Idris materialize on their makeshift TARDIS console, where Ood nephew is standing. Poor Ood nephew is scattered into molecules that they're now breathing, I guess.
Yeah. And now House asks his question again, why shouldn't I just kill you all? And the Doctor comes up with the right answer. Don't kill us because then we won't be able to help you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, Rory, take notes for the future.
So meanwhile, the Doctor has to explain who Idris is, that Idris is a woman and the TARDIS. And Amy has this great moment which she says, accusingly, did you wish for her really hard? Did you wish about that this beautiful woman would be the TARDIS? And I had flashbacks to like the movie 80s movie Weird Science, where the boys teenage boys create the beautiful girl. He also, as he realizes that Ood nephew is been dematerialized, he does say the line, "Another Ood I failed to save," which is the Doctor's great ongoing regret with the Ood.
He did save a bunch of them, though.
Yes. As Idris is dying, the Doctor does get House to promise not to kill them immediately, but it does realize it can delete the control room and thus tries to delete it. But they all end up in the main control room because there's a hardwired fail-safe that means you can't delete a room with someone in it. If someone's in the room that you try to delete, they get transported to the main console room, which is House's error because once Idris is there, she can enter back into the TARDIS and take over.
So instead of a Deus Ex Machina ending, we have a Deus Ad Machina ending. The god goes into the machine.
Yep. Yes. There's a line the House gives.
For people who may not be familiar, Deus Ex Machina means the god from the machine, and it's a reference to classical Greek drama where the resolution of the play would often be provided by one of the Olympian gods, played by an actor, that would be lowered onto the stage by a winch, the god from the machine.
Yes, and it would have an implausibly neat conclusion, which is the reference today.
Kind of like a lot of Doctor Who episodes. I mean,
yes. So House has the line where he says, "I have killed hundreds of Time Lords. Fear me." And the Doctor says in return, "I killed them all. Fear me," which is kind of a funny, if a bit dark, admission.
And eventually Stephen Moffat will walk it back because, of course, he does.
Of course, because no one can die under Stephen Moffat's watch. But as Idris, the body, dies, her energy leaves the body and heads into the TARDIS and ends up killing House. Basically, it ejects him and he has no place to go. And so an image of Idris appears, like almost a hologram of her appears, and she says hello and goodbye and I love you, and the Doctor gets emotional.
And she notes, this is when we talked. So this is it. This is the only time we get to talk. And until the writers decide to change that.
Right. Yep. Although the implication is because she sees all of her existence at once, because she exists in all those times at once, this would be the only time. But you're right. No rules bind the writers of Doctor Who. Let's just put it that way. So Rory says at the end, Idris kept repeating something they'd need to know. The only water in the forest is in the river, which is going to be important at the end of the season. So, but that's where that comes from. And apparently in a line that Moffat inserted.
Clearly.
Yes. All the bedrooms got deleted, as we said before, and so the Doctor has to make a new one for Rory and Amy, and they ask him not to put bunk beds in it again, which is, the married couple in bunk beds, and he doesn't get it.
He doesn't get it because, beds with a ladder, that's cool. And it illustrates the boyishness of the 11th Doctor. Because if you're a boy, a bed with a ladder is really cool.
Yes. Make a bed with a ladder that's a king-size bed, elevated. That's all. So that's what I would ask for, because I think that's cool.
He also suggests taking them to the Eye of Orion to get some relaxation.
Yes, or wherever we need to go. And then the levers do move on their own, showing that she's still there, alive in the machine. And that's
which also explains things like why the 10th Doctor was able to just snap his fingers and get her to open the doors and things like that.
Right. In fact, that's something that this Doctor does earlier when he's trying to get in there and back into the TARDIS, and he does snap his fingers and it won't open for him. And that's when he knows he has no control over the TARDIS anymore. So yeah, that's a nice little moment there. And he does.
Mm-hmm.
At first, he kind of doubts that she's there. Are you there? Can you hear me? And then he's like, no, I guess not. And then when the levers move on their own, he does the ha-ha, woohoo moment where he realizes she's there. And that's where we end. So any final notes on this episode, Father Cory?
They called the TARDIS consciousness the TARDIS matrix. That is separate from the knowledge of all, or the repository of all Time Lord knowledge known as the Matrix that we've seen in the Sixth Doctor and other places as well. They are not the same matrix. That doesn't mean there can't be more than one matrix. So
right. All right. Jimmy, any?
So after this, like I said, I loved this episode. I thought it was awesome. It was great to get to see Neil Gaiman do this kind of world building with Doctor Who. Neil Gaiman is one of a bunch of comic artists, including Alan Moore and Grant Morrison, who have really interesting takes on classic material. Like the first thing that Alan Moore did when he took over the Swamp Thing title was completely reinterpret who Swamp Thing is. Mm-hmm. And he just recontextualized the character massively, and it was fascinating. And he did the same kind of thing with Watchmen. And, I was really looking forward, therefore, to see what Neil Gaiman would do with Doctor Who's mythology. And this did not disappoint. And so I was so stoked the next season to see the amazing things that Neil Gaiman was going to do in his next announced episode, but it turned out to be a nightmare in silver.
Oh.
Right.
By comparison.
Yes. I'm trying to remember. Yeah. I'll look it up. I'll look it up later, but yeah.
It's the Cyberman episode with Mr. Clever.
Oh, right. So I think that should do it for this one. Yeah, I one of my favorites, like you said, Jimmy. This is a lot of fun and a lot of cool, like Time Lord Doctor mythology handled well. This is one of the best ones of the Moffat era, and
yeah. Oh, and I should mention Gaiman himself reinterpreted Sandman. That's where he made his name in American comics.
Okay.
Yes. Right.
Remember.
Yep. All right. So let's wrap that up there. We want to take a moment, of course, to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Cyprian C., Esther R., Ron B., Armin P., and Damian M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You could join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And right now is a great time to become a StarQuest patron, because thanks to a generous gift from a StarQuest supporter, when you start a new Patreon monthly pledge at sqpn.com/give, the first 3 months will be matched by an equal amount from our donor. So if you become a new patron at $10 a month, after 3 months, our donor will give $30 to StarQuest to support all our shows, so including this one. So making your gift go even further. If you've been thinking about becoming a StarQuest patron, now is the time. So please visit sqpn.com/give today. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. And so that's it from us. Let us hear from you what you think of The Doctor's Wife. If this is one of your favorites, or if you have any comments on what we had to say, you can do so on the show's entry at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or you can send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the second Doctor story, The Abominable Snowmen. Until then, Father Cory Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, biting is excellent. It's like kissing, only there's a winner.
Right. This is going to be fun.